And this is the Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew, the 5th chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. The Gospel of the Lord. So the Beatitudes are probably some of the most famous sayings of Jesus. Everybody almost has heard them. And yet, whenever we read them, I get this funny feeling, because I am concerned that people hear them in one of two ways, neither of which is correct. The first way is to read the Beatitudes of Jesus as a call to enjoy our misery. Blessed are those who mourn. You know, it's better for you to be sad and miserable, and you should enjoy it, or at least feel as though somehow this is pleasing to God that you're miserable. But I'm certain that's not what Jesus meant. Otherwise, he would not have gone on to say that those who mourn would be comforted. Now, the Beatitudes are not a call to some kind of Christian masochism. But another way to read the Beatitudes is kind of a form of denial. Yes, you may be poor and hungry and persecuted, but someday in heaven, everything will be all right. So just ignore what you and your neighbors are going through right now. Sit back and just pretend it's not happening. The thing is, Jesus goes on in this very same sermon to tell people to live righteously, and that that's important, to help their neighbors, and to be a light in the world around them. So this also cannot be what Jesus meant. Still, I will tell you that most of the times that I have read the Beatitudes before, life has been okay for me and for the world around me. Yes, there is always a crisis going on in the world someplace, and there has always been some personal pain somewhere in my life. But the whole COVID thing has been different. For me, and for probably most of us, living through this time of pandemic has been a constant and sometimes crushing feeling. It's made feeling like the world is just coming down on us a daily existential reality. And so on this All Saints' Day, that's made me really wonder what the heck Jesus is talking about in the Beatitudes when he talks about blessing in the midst of suffering and oppression and evil. And what does it mean for those of us who are supposed to be called to be Jesus' saints in the world? In my article for this month's Glad Tidings newsletter, I wrote about the need for thankfulness in a time when it doesn't seem like there's much to be thankful for. I remember reading an article a number of years ago that said that purely from a mental health standpoint, it was helpful to conclude each day by thinking about three things, at least three things, that you were thankful for that day. And that this was never more important than when it had been a particularly bad day, and it was hard to identify those three things. But the article said that people who did these things regularly built up a kind of emotional and mental resiliency that many others did not. So over the past few weeks, I have been working on a personal list of 19 things that I am thankful for during COVID-19. And I was thinking about those things in the context of these Beatitudes, because it occurs to me that perhaps Jesus means that the saints are blessed because they can see blessings, even and especially in the midst of pain and suffering. It's not that the bad stuff isn't bad. It is. But it's not all that there is. And sometimes, like those three things, it's hard to say, well, what was a good thing that was happening even in the midst of this pain? And so when I look at my list, some of them are really quite simple, and some of them are sort of silly. But as an example, many of you know I am not a morning person. I just do not like early mornings, and I haven't had to set an alarm for months. I mean, I still work all the hours I usually do, but I never have to get up real early to do it. It's been a good thing for me. Because I spend more time working out of the house, I can take longer walks with Blake. And emotionally and physically, that's been really good for both of us doggies. And I know I should not count this as one of my blessings, as something I'm thankful for, but Synod Assembly got canceled this year. And it may get canceled next year. There are things that I have found that really have been blessings in my life in spite of all the bad stuff going on. And I know I'm not alone in this. Lots of others that I have spoken to have experienced the ability to focus more deeply on important relationships. They have realized things that are important in their life and been able to let other things go. Sometimes people have even been able to lose weight through this time. Not I, but some people. The bad stuff really is painful, but it's not all there is. Maybe, Jesus says, the saints are blessed because they see God's good gifts, even and especially when things are painful for them and the world around them. It also occurs to me, thinking about that list, that perhaps Jesus means that the saints are blessed because they can see new ways of living and new ways of acting, which they might not have seen had it not been for the conflict and the stress. Certainly, that's been the case for lots of us, too. As bad as COVID has been, and perhaps because of it, we have discovered that, for instance, there are different ways of working than simply showing up in an office. And I know that for some people, working out of the house has been absolutely impossible. But in my particular case, it's been more productive and less stressful. And I know a lot of people who are enjoying the fact that they're able to get a whole lot more work done because they're not doing the constant stress of the commute every day. There are ways of doing meetings that have been better for the environment if we don't always have to drive a whole bunch of people around to be in one place. And it's made me think, when this is all over, there are going to be times when it's going to be good and important for us to meet together in person. But sometimes, some of those meetings can still be done by Zoom. It's certainly been the case that there are new ways that we have discovered of being church together, and sort of paradoxically, new opportunities to connect with others, even in a time of distancing. I look forward to the time when we can all be together in this room, but the ability to be able to broadcast has made it possible for us to connect with people who would never be able to be here with us, even if we were having live worship together. And we have discovered some things like Monday evening prayer and Friday story time for kids, ways in addition to the things we do together that really have connected with people and helped people to grow in faith. Some of those things were always possible for us, but maybe we wouldn't have figured them out or figured them out as quickly without some of the stress that we've been going through. I mean, it's even the case that I've heard from a number of people that snow days may soon be a thing of the past. Because even though nobody wants to do online schooling all the time, we've gotten good enough at it that it's possible that if there was a snow emergency, people could do online for a few days and then kids wouldn't have to be in school until the end of June. Kids won't like it, but there are new possibilities that maybe we wouldn't have been prepared for had it not been for the conflict and the stress. So maybe Jesus says that the saints are blessed because they're the people who have the opportunities or see the opportunities to live in new ways and to shape the life of the world more into the image of the kingdom of God. Maybe the blessing isn't the pain per se, but the realization of new opportunities God is putting before us, which might have been there all along, but which we couldn't have seen without the difficult situation. And it occurs to me also that perhaps Jesus means that the saints are blessed because they can experience hope even in the midst of the problems. Sometimes experiencing hope and sharing a vision of hope is the thing that enables you to get through the tough times. But the vision that makes saints blessed is a vision that includes this life. It's a vision that makes it worthwhile to hunger and thirst for righteousness and peace right here and right now. And being able to see and share that vision is what helps people get through the difficult times. Now, to be sure, there are visions, like from our first reading today from the book of Revelation, where in heaven with God, God will wipe away every tear from our eyes and surely also COVID. But you know what? In our congregation, and this is really, I found this to be a real blessing because this is not just something I read about on the news. I actually talk to people in our congregation who work for companies that are developing the vaccines and people who are working on Operation Warp Speed to deliver it. And when I speak to those folks, I'm reminded that God is working through them and through others to bring about hope beyond this present crisis, not just someday in heaven, but in the foreseeable future, right here. So maybe Jesus means that the saints are blessed because they see hope for the future, surely in the afterlife, but also for this life as well, because they are absolutely convinced that God is not finished with us yet. You know, today, we remember the saints who have gone before us in our lives. And when we do that, it's often the case that the people we remember as personal saints in our lives were the people who taught us how to see God's blessings, even in the midst of difficult times. They were the people who taught us that following Jesus is never more important than when times are tough. And they were the people who modeled hope for us, even in the face of darkness. So, now it's our turn. Jesus calls us today to be saints by recognizing the blessings God is giving to us, even and especially in difficult times. Jesus calls us today to be saints by acting faithfully to share those blessings even when things are personally painful in our lives. And Jesus is calling us today to be saints by modeling the kind of hope that gives others in our world the strength and the courage to meet the days ahead.